A Bedtime Story Chapter 1 Podcast. Philip's Journey, A New Beginning in Canada. Phillips Harding grew up surrounded by the salty sea breeze and the shouts of fishermen in the port of Liverpool. His father, a man with rough hands and a gaze hardened by the wind, spent entire days at sea, bringing back fish to sell at the market. His mother, a laundress in the slums, spent hours bent over freezing water tubs, scrubbing clothes for wealthy families. But Phillips dreamed of more. He didn't want to spend his life trapped in the poverty of the docks. He wanted to travel, discover new lands, and build a better future. When he heard that a steamship called King Arthur needed crew members for a voyage to Quebec, he knew this was his chance. He had no money for a ticket, but he had youth, strength, and the will to work. On September 1, 1863, Phillips boarded the King Arthur as an engine room assistant. His job was to feed coal into the boilers, keep the area clean, and follow orders without question. The heat in the ship's engine room was suffocating, but it was still better than the life he left behind. The first leg of the journey was smooth. After a couple of days, the ship made its first stop in Ireland, at the port of Cove. More passengers boarded there, mostly Irish families fleeing poverty and famine. It was in Cove that Phillips met Seamus O'Connell, an experienced Irish sailor who specialized in shipyard carpentry and had a guaranteed job in Quebec. During the journey, Seamus took a liking to the young Englishman and told him about his cousins in Quebec, who might help him get settled. The King Arthur continued its course across the Atlantic. As they advanced, the weather became more challenging. Giant waves shook the ship, and the wind howled through the masts. Phillips worked tirelessly in the engine room, covered in soot and sweat. In the few hours of rest, he would go up on deck to breathe fresh air and gaze at the vast ocean. After 10 days at sea, they arrived in Newfoundland, their last stop before Quebec. The port of St. John's was bustling with activity, with sailors unloading supplies and merchants selling dried fish and furs. Phillips felt the biting cold of the coast, a reminder that the most difficult part of the journey was yet to come, crossing the St. Lawrence River. Fortunately, they departed from Newfoundland at the right time. In autumn, the weather could turn treacherous, but luck was on their side. On September 16, the King Arthur arrived in Quebec without major incidents. Phillips saw the city from the deck and felt a mix of excitement and fear. This was a new world, full of opportunities and challenges. Upon disembarking, Seamus kept his promise and took Phillips with him. His cousins, Harry and Susan O'Connell, welcomed them warmly. Harry was an accountant at a local shipyard, while Susan worked as a seamstress. Although they didn't have much space, they offered the newcomers a small attic room in their house, clean and cozy. Phillips was grateful. He was no longer alone in this new world. The next morning, Harry took them to the shipyard to introduce them to his employers. Seamus had a secure position as a carpenter, and Phillips hoped to find his own opportunity. As they walked through the streets of Quebec, he felt, for the first time, that his destiny was taking shape. Phillips worked at the shipyard for 5 years, starting with the most humble jobs and slowly moving up. On weekends, he attended the Irish church, where he made friends and found support. Through great effort, he studied French and accounting in evening classes. Noticing his dedication, his cousin Harry encouraged him to train as an assistant accountant at the shipyard. It was there that Phillips met Mr. O'Hara, an Irish client of the shipyard. O'Hara was impressed with the young man's intelligence and dedication and offered him a job as his personal secretary, as his previous secretary was planning to retire to the countryside. Phillips eagerly accepted the offer. Not only would his salary increase from 45 cents to $1, but he would also receive food and a room at O'Hara's residence. This allowed him to send more money to his widowed mother and 12-year-old sister, who were still in Liverpool. 4 years later, Phillips received a heartbreaking letter from his sister. Their mother had passed away, and she begged him for help. He decided to speak with Mr. O'Hara, explaining that he needed to return to Liverpool to care for his sister. However, O'Hara refused. He had grown fond of Phillips. Since he and his wife Marion O'Hara had Northwest children or close relatives, O'Hara made an unexpected decision. He would pay for Phillips' sister to travel to Canada and work in their home. On January 2nd of that year, Phillips went to the port to welcome his sister. When he saw her, he barely recognized her. The little girl he had left behind had become a young woman. When Johanna arrived at the house, Marion O'Hara was surprised by her presence and prepared a room for her. She also gave her some dresses she no longer wore, a gesture that deeply moved the young girl. The next day, grateful for the kindness she received, Johanna began helping around the house, assisting the cook and the other maid, who worked until 6 p.m. After that, Phillips and Johanna took care of the household chores until 9:30 p.m., when they could either retire to their rooms or take a walk in the garden. But the story does not end here. Microphone, listen to the next podcast to find out what happens next. With hard work and the unexpected support of the O'Haras, Phillips and his sister managed to rebuild their lives far from Liverpool. But what will happen to Phillips' great-grandson? Don't miss a bedtime story.